The Forum on the Family is one of the premier conferences held every year and hosted by Family First, with international and national speakers. And this year, it's a significant one. It's our 20th anniversary. Yes, despite attempts to deregister, muzzle and cancel us, we're still here, 20 years strong. The Forum on the Family brings together a national network of family-focused organisations, scholars, lobby groups, church leaders and community groups who are part of a growing movement to strengthen families, protect marriage, protect life and defend religious freedom. This year's conference will be held in Auckland City at the Victory Convention Centre on Friday evening the 11th of September and all day Saturday the 12th of September. As per last year, we're starting the conference with 3 important sessions and a time of networking on the Friday evening, and then a full program all day Saturday. And at this year's conference, once again, we have an amazing lineup of speakers from the US, Australia and New Zealand. I want to invite you to this year's Forum on the Family. It's a special one as we celebrate 20 years strong. It starts Friday night, 11th of September, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m, and then all day Saturday, 12th of September, 8:45 a.m. through to 5 p.m. Oh, and being a weekend, there will be no peak hour traffic to battle. It's the highlight of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Arrange to be there. Book your flights today. Gather your friends. If you're concerned for our culture, our country and our families, you may be saying, what can I do? Step 1, attend the Forum on the Family. Have your spine stiffened by some fabulous speakers who will encourage, equip and inspire you. Now, the last couple of years have been sellouts, so don't delay. Go to our website, forumonthefamily.nz, for all the information you need. Register today. Don't miss this important family conference. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. Register today.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Solid Ground. Lovely to have you along on this rather chilly Thursday morning. Has it not been cold or what? I have to say, even here in Auckland, but I've been following the news with great interest. As I say, freezing cold. I'm actually not 100% sure where this photo is. Some of you may be able to identify it better than me, but this was from the news. I think I got this from the New Zealand Herald, but boy, has it been cold. But then again, it is winter, at least for a few more weeks. I don't know about you guys, and isn't this very, very English, very New Zealand to talk the weather? Isn't it striking, actually, how, for me, certainly and for Rachel, how mild the winter has been. Although granted, she and I were away for a good month, enjoying 35 to 45 degree temperatures, so it has been a bit of a shock. But as I say, good morning and welcome to everyone here on Solid Ground, where we talk the issues of the day from a solid ground of faith, philosophy, of politics, and I'd like to think of common sense. The regulars will know this is a live show. It's coming to you live from Auckland here in New Zealand. And so particularly welcome to any newbies and anyone from overseas. We actually have a growing number of people viewing, watching, listening Solid Ground, and actually all our other shows like Daybreak, Bob's show in the morning, across New Zealand and across the world. So welcome. I'm having a few technical issues around the comments this morning. Again, the regulars will know as a live show, I'm usually able to take comments from Facebook and YouTube live here in the show. But whether it's I'm rushed or not, I'm actually having a bit of trouble with that today. Not the comments themselves. I will be able to see those, so please comment away. I'm just not able as readily as normal to bring them into the show. But good morning to you all. As I say, comment away, whether you're on Family First YouTube channel or its Facebook page or on my Facebook page or on Substack, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. Know that your comments I'll get to after the show. But guys, there is just no shortage, as I say, of issues going around at the moment. But I sort of want to do a little bit of a dive into a few of the issues which are, percolating around at the moment. And I think just need a little bit more reflection. Some are around actually what's happening in terms of name suppression in New Zealand's courts. I just want to touch on that for a while. The reporting around puberty blockers, you may or may not know, the court case challenging the Minister of Health and the government's decision to ban puberty blockers for new patients over 18 is under challenge. I want to dive in to that a little bit. But as I say, before we do so, acknowledging it's been freezing cold. In fact, I've been in Wellington, of all places. I'll update you more on Tuesday once I collect my thoughts. But I've been to Wellington as part of something with the Free Speech Union. They've been holding what they call good faith yarns around the country. Open discussions with various speakers across a wider range of topics, from farming to climate change, from whether or not someone who's appointed to a Crown entity, to a board, can actually still have their speech. And I sat down last evening with Annie O'Brien, who's the host, and ACT MP Todd Stephenson to talk about euthanasia. Todd is pushing to expand euthanasia in New Zealand, as is the ACT Party. So he was obviously presenting his side, and I was there presenting mine, which is a consistent ethic of life. We shouldn't be prematurely ending people's lives. So it was a good faith yarn, but I'm still getting my head around it all. What was a very good, enjoyable evening, and actually a respectful discussion. And so I'll bring you more up to date on that on Tuesday, and hopefully maybe even a few pictures from the night. But I think what's important to say, and it's why these good faith yarns are being had even on these cold days, including in Wellington, is actually even when it comes to major ethical issues like euthanasia, or we can add in puberty blockers, abortion, marriage, all these things, actually there is still room in our liberal democracy, in our society, to sit down and talk about these things. We don't always have to resort to the abuse and the vitriol, which we see so much now in social media. And I would argue we're seeing more and more in the political discourse. When you think everything from what Winston Peters has said in recent days, to Tamitha Paul calling the English language a bastard language, to other behaviours in the House, I think that actually does them no credit. But we can still have, as I say, good faith yarns. And as just as a side note, last week I actually sat down with Annie O'Brien on my RCR online radio show to talk about free speech, to talk about the good faith yarns. And so check that out. Just go across to rcr.media. You can hear the interview there. I thought it was particularly good, and not because I'm the interviewer, but Annie's got some really good insights to share. And she also talks about how an Auckland councillor, a Labour-aligned councillor, her name's Julie Ferry, she's actually married to the former Labour MP Michael Woods, tried to shut down the discussion in a council-owned facility because she didn't agree with Annie O'Brien talking to Rob Campbell. Rob Campbell is a very left-wing speaker, writer and commentator. He's actually well known amongst many reasons. He's currently the Chancellor for AUT and has held very senior board positions, including I think he was actually the head of Health New Zealand. But during some of the political debates, including I think around the Treaty Principles Bill, he was, well, it comes back to one of the reasons for the good faith yarns, he was appointed by the Crown to speak into the health issues, but because he chose to start attacking the government of the day, the very government which appointed him, he lost his role. And so that was the whole point of the good faith yarn. was for Rob to sit down and talk about that tension between actually, your free speech, your right to have an opinion, and being appointed to government boards. And it's actually, speaking personally, been one of my concerns and one of the reasons I've not put my hand up or stepped up to the plate around Crown appointments, is because I don't want to be muzzled. It's as simple as that. I want to be able to have my opinions, and there is, rightly or wrongly, and you can make your own decisions, when you are appointed to a Crown entity, onto the board of a Crown corporation, you do pretty much lose your ability to speak. But as I say, Annie and I talk about how this left-wing, far-left councillor, Julie Ferry, wanted to shut down the debate because it just is wrong. It's terribly wrong, according to Julie Ferry, that people might actually sit down and talk about these matters. And she was upset that the Free Speech Union, who she sees as dangerous and right-wing, could be allowed in a centre which is pride-oriented, that somehow our council venues now, which you and I pay for, and it'll be the same across the country, it's pride-aligned. It has to only support one view of the ever-growing alphabet, which is ironic, as Annie points out, because she herself's a lesbian and Julie Ferry is not. And it's a typical, I would argue, left-wing response. You see it in the pride space, you see it in the treaty space. A whole lot of, and often it is, dare I say it, white women, liberal white women, who end up speaking on behalf of other groups. They get aggrieved for other groups. They haven't asked those other groups permission. They're not necessarily aligned with these other groups. They just think they're doing a good thing. But anyway, I've gone off, as typical me, on a tangent, but check out that interview with Annie. I wanted to share another video with you. This is coming from Parliament. I'm sure Bob has shared it with you while I was away. But it's a bit of a shout out by Jenny Macroft of New Zealand First around family first. Boy, isn't that always a mouthful. New Zealand First, talking about family first. And I thought it was worth sharing some of it, because actually Family First exists because of you guys and your support, your encouragement, obviously your donations, but it's also that strength that allows Bob, myself and the team to go and advocate for important issues. So it's nice to have it acknowledged in the House. So I'll just share that briefly.
There have been a number of petitions, a couple of petitions this term. I'd like to speak to one in particular, that of Bob McCroskey on behalf of Family First. He wanted to define women as an adult human female in laws, public policies and legislation. And that petition was referred to the Minister. Sometimes the Petitions Committee deal with it, sometimes it goes to another committee, or it's referred to a minister. And in this case, Bob's petition was referred to a minister. There was 23,000, just over 23,000 signed that petition. And the petitioner said that the shift away from sex-based rights grounded in biological realities has profound implications for the rights of biological women, particularly in contexts such as women's sports and women's only spaces.
Which of course is 100% correct. So thanks to Jenny Macroft for that shout out, actually, and kudos, and it has to be said, to New Zealand First, because they have picked up the ball on this petition. Sorry, there we are, get my English right. They picked up the petition. We delivered it last year. We actually went down to Wellington. Tanya Unkovich, who was an MP at the time, and Winston Peters both received that petition. They turned it then into a members' bill, which, as you'll know, has been drawn out and so far supported at first reading. So I suppose, guys, it's just to say thank you. Your voices, your signatories to petitions like that, signing open letters from Family First, does make a difference. It'll be interesting to see where things go. As I mentioned, it passed in its first reading, the What is a Woman bill. But I certainly know, talking to colleagues across the House, there's a lot of resistance. Certainly everyone on the left, so Labour, Greens to Party Māori, I have absolutely no idea what a woman is, which for me always makes things quite ironic when you think when they bleat on about gender pay gaps and women's rights and pay equity. Which, it's important to talk about these things, but it's a bit ironic, isn't it, when you have left-wing parties that talk about these things but don't actually know what a woman is. On the right, New Zealand First clearly behind it. I think ACT has actually been quite robust. National split, I have to say, whether or not they all voted for it at the start, which they did. I think that would be what you called a whipped vote. There's certainly confusion, disappointingly, particularly from the Minister of Women, who is meant to represent women. If you listen to her speech in the Parliament, clear that she doesn't actually know what a woman is, despite being one herself. So hopefully she comes to and understands this, because it is important to protect women and girls, and we have to stop these men trying to force their way into women's spaces, which is again another really important reason to come to Forum on the Family, because we're going to have Sal Grover speaking there amongst others. Sal is amazing, as you know, and just to remind you guys, all this blatant advertising, that there's actually a special rate for young people. Now, you can't be trans young, you can't identify as a young person, but if you are a student or you have kids in your family, bring them along. It's a special rate, and know that we'll feed them on Friday night and all through the Saturday. Speaking of politics, you'll have seen this absolutely appalling situation in recent days. This is the Migrant Union of New Zealand, and along with, I think it's Socialist Aotearoa. So basically just think the left of the left, they're also aligned to the pro-Hamas, the pro-Islamic terrorist crowd here in New Zealand. Set up guillotines in Britomart, so that's the bottom of Queen Street in Auckland, and cut off the heads of papier-mâché effigies, including of Winston Peters. Now, they say that's in reaction to his racist comments. To be blunt with you, I don't care the reasoning. I actually think Winston's comments about the Green MP were not right, were not needed. I'd actually prefer that he would apologise. I do think, too, at the same time, it's become quite a media beater, but I do want to be clear, I don't think Winston's comments were appropriate. But it is never appropriate, in my opinion, to be setting up guillotines in public and mocking, if you will, or mocking up the cutting of someone's head. This is violent rhetoric which should have no place in New Zealand. For what it's worth, I don't think these people should be arrested. I still remain a free speech advocate. I don't think that's required. And there'll be some here debating, going, look, this is incitement to violence, and I can understand that as well. That's a debating point. But we must and should be calling this out, because there is an increasing violent rhetoric developing in New Zealand. It doesn't matter if it's, again, guillotine. I mean, you just have to step back for a moment. They are taking the symbol of the French terror, where thousands, if not tens of thousands of people were killed, to express their political opinions. Whether they say it's a mocking, a satire, it's all light-hearted, supposed. Cutting someone's head off in public is very dramatic. And never forget, of course, these left-wingers, these pro-Hamas crowds, these union militants, they all talk about love and peace and tolerance. They only ever believe in peace and tolerance when they have their way. These people are, unfortunately, violent by nature. And you just have to look at what's happening around the globe with the likes of Antifa. Look in the United States at the moment, all the left-wing violence directed towards the government. I talked on Tuesday about Islamic terrorism. It is a major problem. It's a major problem within Islam, and now that we've imported it into our country, it's our problem. And it has to be confronted, and it has to be called out. And so, look, Bob and I will be talking more about that, not just the effigy beheadings and so forth, but we'll be talking about all of that tonight on Political Playback. We have a fresh poll out. Obviously, Luxon's in trouble again. Is it because of his own doing, or is the media just putting the boot in? Said there's new policies to discuss. So look, no shortage of topics as always. So join us, and that's from 5 o'clock. Hopefully we'll have all the comments section all sorted by then. But just wanted to call that out. I thought I'd switch then to what I still find is amusing. You might be aware if you've been following social media in particular, because of course the mainstream media won't report this stuff. Elon Musk recently did a interview with I think it's the editor. I've forgotten her name and I apologise for that, but the editor of The Economist. She sat down and had quite a freewheeling discussion. In fact, I listened to her speak to the BBC a week or so later, and actually it was really good. She talks about the nature of the interview and how she does it. And I actually was fairly impressed. I mean, she and he, and you'll see a small snippet here, certainly trade barbs. He pushes her, not physically, but verbally in the argument space. He pushes her, she pushes back. But I was really quite taken by, credit to her, the professionalism she brought. But I was also struck about how she got the interview with Elon. It was all very relaxed. She talked, again, this was the BBC interview with her, that she just DM'd him, direct messaged him on X, because Elon prefers to use his platform to be contacted. He agreed, and then one of his team, basically just a diarist, set the appointment up. And she herself was saying that's actually pretty admirable, because normally when she interviews significant people, whether they're political or wealthy or whatever, they have a whole entourage of people, press secretaries, media advisors, I suspect people who, putting powder on their faces, security teams, everything. She said that's not with Elon. He just said, yep, they agreed a day and a time. He was about an hour late, but he just turned up with literally his diarist, sat down and talked. So credit to him. But I thought I'd share this because there's a bit of an interchange around, well, a couple of things, but I'll play it and then comment.
You support not just the populist right, but the far right. In fact, very fringe parties in some countries.
No, I support the normal people.
Okay.
What you call the far right, falsely.
You think is the normal person. Okay.
Yes. Literally, you could go back 10 or 15 years, and these policies were completely normal. In fact, one of the tricks that I think is funny. One of the things that's quite funny is to take a speech from Obama and Hillary, and then go to someone and say, who's sort of on the sort of what I call the lunatic left, and say, what do you think of the speech by Trump? I'm like, oh wow, he's the worst person ever. Actually, that was a speech by Obama, or actually, that was a speech by Hillary.
I agree. No, I agree that the center of gravity in this country has shifted. Certainly, the Democratic Party shifted to the left. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like Rupert Lowe. I'm talking
right,
about
please.
people.
It's actually just normal people. It's just normal people. It's just normal people. And and here are the principles. And tell me which of these sound terrible. That we should have secure borders. That we should have safe cities. That we should have sensible spending. Which of those three are far right fringe? And I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
We'll keep all of this in, but let me
Don't cut this part.
Don't know what your view is, but I think he's actually 100% right in everything he says. It's what they call the Overton window. You've probably seen the cartoon of sort of the left-right spectrum and how those on the left have gone. Not all of them, I better be clear. Actually, there's still a lot of good traditional left-wing voters, but the real progressive far left have gone so off the reservation that anyone to the right of them now looks like, to use their term, a fascist. So good on Elon actually calling it out. And he's very right. You can pick up the speeches of left-wing politicians from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and what they were saying pretty much accords with what normal people would say today. And I think, I don't know about yourselves, but I'm getting tired of us being gaslit for believing actually we do, as Elon says, want secure borders. We want a decent health system. We want safe cities. We actually want to be able to celebrate our families. We want to be able to educate our children. We don't want to be indoctrinated around everything from climate change to gender ideology. These are not far left or fringe issues. They are right in the centre. If anything, they lean more to the right, but into the centre-right space. And this is why you are seeing the rise of the Rupert Lowes and the Nigel Farages and the Malays in Argentina, Maloney in Italy, Trump, of course, and the United States, and the likes of One Nation in Australia. It is a reaction. And by the way, it's not populist. Again, that's just a word which gets thrown out by the left wing to try and degrade people. It's the same as all their phobias and the isms they throw at people. It's just a verbal tactic to make it sound somewhat sinister. I can say as a former politician, to get voted in, you have to be popular, which by definition is a populism. So look, ignore those things, but good on Elon calling it out. And the left wing, because you've seen it too if you've been following the news, not only with obviously the Islamist attack in Berlin, but what's been happening in Ceuta in North Africa, of course, that 60,000 Moroccans storming through the border into that little enclave, and how the media has been responding to it. That anyone questioning the fact that 60,000 people just stormed into your area is not an invasion. Oh, well, they all just went back home, as if, 60 people stormed into your house right now, but then all left. That would be fine. I mean, the absurdities of the left are just so clear to see. But as I say, good that he is calling that out, Elon Musk. Look, I said I was going to touch on puberty blockers. So as you know, last year the government made a decision that actually puberty blockers are not safe, or there's not enough evidence for their use. So they've said, look, anyone over 18 with gender dysphoria and as a new patient should not be, or is it under 18. And you can imagine all the trans activists have jumped up and down, yelling and screaming, and then run off to court about this. And currently the Crown, the government, is fighting what's called PATHA, basically a fringe group of gender radicals. They talk about themselves as a broad approach multidisciplinary. They're basically headed up by a trans activist with no medical knowledge, a smattering of some medical people and others, but it's an activist group. And they're all arguing, of course, that we have to help the kids, even though all those tropes around suicide rates and everything have been disproved. I think the fundamental thing to say to you guys is you need to understand that this really is a case of whether the government is allowed to make decisions versus not. In other words, we can even back away, and I'd suggest we do need to back away from some of the ins and outs of whether, puberty blockers are good or right, whether it's okay to pump children full of drugs to stop something fairly normal, whether, of course, it's a right to ignore all the evidence, which, by the way, as I say, there is no evidence that actually suicide rates decline because kids are put onto puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. In fact, studies show it's getting worse. We know from studies coming out of the likes of the UK that actually these puberty blockers do harm to children, bone density and the like. We also know that actually if you let kids go through puberty, most of them get through this. But the fundamental aspect here is the government should be allowed. The government should be allowed to legislate. And if the minister of the day decides to use the law to say we are not allowing these drugs to be prescribed in this way, then they should be allowed to be. You don't have to agree with it or not. I'm sure a Labour government would do the opposite. But they're allowed to do so. And it'll be interesting to see what the court does and doesn't do, because I'm a bit concerned, not that I'm in the courtroom, but I'm a bit concerned that our courts are getting captured by ideology and are no longer applying the law clearly. And I mentioned on Tuesday the gang patch ban, where Parliament had clearly indicated its intention around the law, had clearly indicated that it knew it was breaching an aspect of the Bill of Rights. But you said, you know what, we're not going to allow these criminal thugs to walk around with their patches. But a woke judge, a woke court here in New Zealand's decided that they know better and have returned it to Parliament. And I think we got a similar dynamic potentially happening here. But I just thought I'd pull out, and again, this is a couple of weeks old, but I still think it bears reflecting on. This is a Herald headline, and it's symbolic of the misleading news. And you've heard me talk about it here before. It's not just what the media chooses to report or not report. It's also how they choose to frame things, or often actually just ignore. So the reason around this was literally it was a couple of doctors. They don't say who the doctors are, they won't name them, they always put it in sort of a safetiest, oh no, we have to protect their identity. Probably doctors who make money off this, either directly because they're doing the surgeries or prescribing the puberty blockers, or they may even be part of the import of drugs. We know that in the abortion space, some of the most vociferous advocates for it are the ones who make money off importing the abortion drugs. But these are also people who make reputations on writing their, well, pretty much useless academic papers. But what struck me too is we're aware, because there's a letter in public, I think it's about a year or so old now, it's like 30 plus doctors, endocrinologists, pediatricians who wrote to the Minister of Health about a year or so ago and saying, actually, you do need to stop the use of these puberty blockers. They're dangerous. So the Herald's chosen to run an article about a couple of doctors who say, this is a great thing, let's pump children full of drugs to stop the normal development in adolescence. But they choose, the Herald that is, to ignore the 30 plus experts in the area. It's a small point, but an important one. And RNZs know better. And again, though, this is not about identity. You can pretend to be an elephant, a hippopotamus, or a giraffe all you want. But that does not oblige anything on society. It certainly does not oblige people to start pumping young children full of drugs to stop something which is natural and normal. But the court case has got nothing to do with identity. I just want to draw you back, as I say, the heart of this case is, does the law allow the Minister of Health on this occasion to make regulations? And my understanding is yes. Again, it doesn't matter if you agree with the regulations or not. Is the minister allowed to make these? And I suppose I'm somewhat repeating myself, but it'll be interesting to see where the court lands. Will it actually follow New Zealand's law, or will the judge be captured by gender ideology, saying, oh, well, no, look, the law does allow the minister to make these decisions, but I just don't think it's the right one. So we're going to follow that with, I think, great interest. And to wrap it out, because typical me, I've gone longer than I thought. I'll have to come back to the name suppression on Tuesday. This is in Australia. The context being the Nurses Union has removed a journal article by one of its members and researchers who basically went through all the research and showed actually that the suicide research being done in the past doesn't say what they want it to say. So as you know, the trans activists are all across the world, here in New Zealand as well, basically say, look, if you don't give these drugs to kids, they'll kill themselves. Firstly, these kids and into the adults have serious mental health problems, so we have to address that. But we also know from research around the world that suicide rates do not go down for those being treated for gender dysphoria with the likes of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and even mutilating treatments. It does not go down, it goes up. In other words, these treatments achieve nothing. But it's one of the golden tropes that these activists hold on to. They use it as a bribe, particularly of parents. If you don't give your child these drugs, these puberty blockers, you'll lose your kid. It's a lie. It's a disgraceful lie. As I say, multiple pieces of research are now underlining the nature of that lie. And this nurse, this researcher, is a good example of it. In Australia, went through and said, actually, I've looked at all these research papers that you quote, and it shows the opposite of what you're saying. So he wrote, as you would, a research paper. And the Nurses Union, their journal, withdrew it. They said, no, we don't like it. It's hatred. It's upsetting to people. We don't like it. I mean, that's the state, isn't it, of academia in not clearly Australia, but around the world, that ideas which people don't like get withdrawn. It's the same in recent days. I think it's the psychologist here in New Zealand withdrew a Māori psychologist's paper from its journal because they said actually there's no evidence of racism in New Zealand's psychological system. That didn't accord with the activists in the psychologist board or whoever it is here in New Zealand, because they're about to go out and I think apologise to Maori in New Zealand for the systemic racism in their system. And as I say, our Māori researcher said, well, no, actually, I've looked at the data, there's no evidence. They censored that, just as they've censored this Australian nurse. Absolutely shocking behaviour. And it needs to come more and more to light because it's just, it's dangerous. Guys, I've run out of time as usual. Reminder that in a few hours, 5 o'clock, Bob and I will be doing political playback. Please check that out. Know that you can always access also our written content. Bob and I write prolifically on Substack. Well, prolifically for me is about once a week. Bob is very, very busy. Jump over to his Mick blog or just onto our YouTube channel. He's recently interviewed Winston Peters and David Seymour, which is great. And I've just released a new podcast for Family First. It's with Christy McVie. She's actually an Australian, a former police officer and detective who was, investigating child exploitation. She's now left the police force and works as an educator and basically someone who helps kids and parents around child exploitation. Exploiting of children is very real in the real world and online. So this is a really important, I would suggest, podcast to listen to. Guys, I better leave it there. As I say, I'll be back tonight, 5 o'clock, with political playback. Bob will be here Friday morning with Daybreak, and I will see you guys again on, Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah, if not Thursday for political playback, I'll see you again here on Straight Talk on Tuesday.